Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next edition of AmiSights. And Ami Kosar, your host, along with my co-host, Lynn Ozer, a.k.a. SB Queen. And today we have a very special guest who I call the King of 21 Hats, Loren Feldman. Loren, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Ami. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, here's the fun of today, Lynn. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Loren is used to interviewing people, and he's got his own very successful podcast and lots of good things on. Rarely does he get interviewed. Now, before the show, he was claiming that he's still going to turn the tables on us, but we're not going to let him, all right?
Okay.
Ami,
We'll
you don't
try.
understand. I've got lots of questions and very few answers. Maybe you want me to turn the tables.
Maybe we'll try to understand the root of that.
Yeah. Loren, how did you start doing a podcast? Actually, I never asked Ami that question either.
Someone
But-
told me to, but
Why a podcast and when did you start?
Lynn, it is a long story.
We like long stories.
You do? Well, the big part of it is I spent a lot of years working for big media companies and covering small business owners and entrepreneurs. And I had great experiences at all the places I worked, Inc., Forbes, New York Times. Learned a lot, really enjoyed it, but always felt like we were missing something. I felt like we didn't really focus enough on the part of the business ownership market that needs the support and care and love and attention more than anyone else. I worked with a lot of really smart business journalists who thought that entrepreneurship was all about Silicon Valley and Wall Street and didn't understand that small businesses are important, not just in the aggregate, but each individual small business has a story to tell that can be really interesting. And they also didn't understand that it was a market opportunity for them that they were missing because they weren't paying attention to it. So I would make a lot of appeals, pitch a lot of ideas, and that they would always tell me, no one ever said it didn't make sense. They kind of patted me on the head and said, that's interesting. We'll get back to you. And I would wait around for 4 or 5 years and they never got back to me. So eventually I would leave. And finally I left and started my own thing, 21 Hats. And as a one-person operation, I was looking for ways to create as much content as possible, valuable content. And a podcast was just the obvious way to go, in part because I think business owners really appreciate hearing straight from the horse's mouth. They don't necessarily want a journalist to interpret for them. They want to hear what business owners have to say about their journeys. And a podcast is a perfect way to invite people in to tell their stories.
Yeah. I think that's similar to what Ami's
yeah.
beginning.
Let's take a step back, Loren. Tell us first, for the people who don't know, what the heck is 21 Hats?
Thank you for asking. 21 Hats is the organization I created to be a community of small business owners. The idea being that there's nothing that really prepares you to be a business owner, to have to make all those decisions. I mean, you can get an MBA, you can work at somebody else's small business, and all those things are really valuable. It's important. But when you're really in the hot seat, it's different. And I think the best way you can learn is by talking to other people on similar journeys. And so I'm trying to build a community. I've got a podcast, I've got a daily email newsletter, I do in-person events. And the hope is, and through all those things, that business owners connect with each other, get to know each other better, ask questions, develop a relationship so they know where to go when they need help with something.
So, Loren, how the heck do you do that? So, first of all, I think Loren and I have been friends for more than a decade. So, and I think Loren is filling an important hole. And I think it remains shocking to me how few journalists there are out there in like sort of the big publications covering small business. Like it just somehow never is a real issue. But with that being said, you leave your corporate life, different editor roles and this and that, and you're thrown into the fire of everything that you've talked about or worked on for a couple decades. And now you suddenly one day wake up and what's next? How did it feel? What did you do? How did that wasn't scary, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It was scary, but the truth is, I've got to acknowledge, I thought about doing this for a long time. As soon as when I went to Inc., I knew a lot about how to put out a magazine. I did not, and I had a background in business journalism, but not necessarily entrepreneurship. I had a lot to learn, and I learned it there. I found out that there were people at Inc. who I could learn from, and I just spent as much time with them as possible and learned a lot. It was a tremendous education, and I kind of fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people I was working with at Inc. and with the entrepreneurs I met because of the work we were doing. And you drink that Kool-Aid, it's impossible not to start thinking, hey, look at all these people who built their own life, who didn't, sign on to somebody else's mission. They carved out their own. You can't be around that and not start to think about it. But at that point, I did have a kid in college and another one getting close to it and a mortgage. And I did not have the guts to go away and do it. I mean, there were times I had conversations with people, and if they had said to me, Loren, how much money do you need to do this? I'll write you the check. I might have done it. But we'll never know because nobody made that offer. But then eventually, I just happened to be introduced to someone who was ready to kind of write that check. It was somebody who had a business that served entrepreneurs, actually several businesses that served entrepreneurs, and was already thinking about creating a platform to bring them together and try to help them on their paths. And I said to him, listen, I've been wanting to do something like this for years. I would encourage you to think a little bit bigger. Don't just build the platform for your existing customers. Let's build the platform for business owners, and you'll bring in a lot more customers for your existing businesses, and we'll also be able to make money off the platform that we build together. And he bought it, and we decided to do it together. It was kind of my idea. It was his money, and it was a very rare opportunity because I quit my job to go to a startup and got a raise to do it, which is not the usual situation. It almost seemed too good to be true. And guess what? It was too good to be true. Fortunately, we ended up partying as friends. He was a real gentleman about it. But the truth is, he would be the first to say this, he was already, at the time he's enlisted with me, he was already starting to have cash flow problems. He had bought 4 companies in the previous year. He bit off a little more than he could chew. And then we ran into the pandemic and he really had cash flow problems. So after about a year, he was gentleman enough to give me the things we had built together, which was the podcast, the daily newsletter, and a start on in-person events, which weren't too important at the time in the middle of the pandemic, but nonetheless, I eventually got around to those. He gave those to me, but obviously minus the salary, and I had to figure out how to do it on my own from there, which I've been doing ever since.
It's terrific. How did you, you were working as an editor at Inc.? Is that what it was?
Yes, and different place.
Yeah, I know, but right before this, and that's when you did the springboard off into 21 Hats, right?
Actually, no, it wasn't from Inc. Inc. was the first place where I learned about entrepreneurship and worked as an editor. While I was there, I learned all kinds of important things about entrepreneurship. I also made the switch there from editing for the print publication to being the editor of the website.
Okay, that's where I was going to ask you. I didn't know if you switched
That was a very
from
important
print to
transition.
virtual. Oh, yeah. Something I could never do, I'm sure.
Well, lots of publications really struggled with it. I mean, it's for years they had put everything into print, and suddenly there's this other thing. And the natural tendency initially was to use the website as kind of a dumping ground. All our most important energy and work goes into the print publication, and then when it's done, we'll throw it all on the website. That's not the way to build a following on a website. I went from there to the New York Times, and they were among the first to figure it out. I mean, they had their challenges and struggles, but by the time I got there, they had already figured out that they could break important stories just online. It didn't have to run first in in the print newspaper. And they considered what they put online every bit as important as what they put in the newspaper. So
Yeah, and
I
now
learned
I
more
don't
there.
think by the time a newspaper comes out, it's old news. What happened the day before, it's definitely old news by the time it's on the front page of the paper.
I don't know if this is still the case. For a long time, even after the Times had recognized that, they were still saying that the print edition was still the most profitable thing they were doing. That may not be the case anymore. It's certainly not the most important thing they do. I'm not sure, but for a long time it was. There were people who just wanted to pick up and be able to hold the product in their hands. But obviously those days are long gone.
Well, that's for sure.
So, Laura, let's talk about the media landscape. You are here. You are building and running one of these niche Substack communities, providing specific content to a nice audience. And those who don't know, I've been writing for Lauren for 21 Hats for 3 years now, Lauren, which is
Is it that long, Ami?
I didn't realize it was that long either, Lynn, but Ami's right. I checked. It's been 3 years. Time flies when you're having fun.
time flies when you're having fun.
Yes.
The world is there, and you're this entrepreneur, and you're trying to build a content community and try to figure out ways to monetize it, and have some events in person and testing different things. And then you have these mammoth beasts like Inc. and Entrepreneur we could go off on Inc. all day if you want to get me really riled up, but who are trying different things and playing for eyeballs and this and that. Like, what the hell's going on out there?
You know, the media world has just been through an incredibly difficult time. Part of it was what we were just talking about. That transition from focusing on print to focusing on digital was really difficult for publications that existed before the internet. You know, I went into this business, no idea where this was going. And I started out working for magazines because I loved long form journalism. I loved working at a place that would give you a month or two to shine the light on a story and write the definitive story. There are fewer and fewer places that have the money to do that. The whole, the world's been turned upside down. So a lot of those a lot of those legacy brands that you're asking about have had a really tough time because they're locked into a way of doing things that it's hard for them to walk away from. A lot of them have, especially for a magazine, the subscription model is to charge very little for a subscription, but to make your money on advertising dollars. That doesn't work as well as it used to because there are all kinds of ways for those advertisers to reach an audience. They don't necessarily have to go to the publications where they used to go to reach business owners or whoever it is they're trying to reach. Same thing as you were applying about clicks. A legacy publication that does try to make it work on digital, oftentimes they get into situations where that forces their hand. They are just looking to drive audience and they're not necessarily focused on how well they are serving that audience. If they're aiming for business owners, you get a lot of stories with headlines like 10 businesses you can start in your pajamas, which is, it's kind of a fun idea and it can be a worthwhile thing to read. And sometimes they're good ideas in a piece like that, but you can't build a publication or a website around those kinds of stories and expect to attract real business owners. Maybe the wannabes, but not real business owners who are in the trenches trying to survive day after day. Now, they need real stories about what they're really going through, and that's much harder to do. It attracts a smaller audience. What's nice for me, it's in a way, it's easier. I mean, not that I've made this work and I'm monetizing the way I hope to yet, but I'm not locked into a previous way of doing things. I can say I'm aiming for an audience of people who are actually fighting the good fight, trying to build a business, and I'm going to create the best content I can that will be useful for them. And I know that's a niche audience, and I'm okay with that.
Is it easier for an advertiser to put their dollars in a niche audience? You would think that it might be. I mean, they're going to get people who specifically need what they have. I really have been sitting here thinking about, I guess I just didn't realize how advertisers have the ability to go out and do what everybody else does directly and instead of latching on to someone else. But I would think that niche advertising would be a great thing for advertisers. You're somebody providing content to people that they want to reach.
Absolutely. The challenge for someone like me is that there are a lot of ways for advertisers to reach that audience. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to come to me. Now, that is my pitch. I think
Yeah.
I have a small but engaged community of
Right.
business owners who will talk about whatever product or service is put in front of them. And I think that's really valuable to the right advertisers. But advertisers can also, go to Google and Facebook and other places and say, here's who I'm trying to reach. You
Where do
know
I?
how to reach them, carve up your audience and give me this slice. And they can probably pay less for it there. And, it's not just a problem for me. It's a problem for the New York Times. It's a problem for Inc.
Yeah.
It's a problem
No.
for Forbes. It's a problem for everybody.
So how do you monetize it? I mean, I'm just thinking about the way that some businesses, do provide free content or free advice or services to their niche audience and hope to get them to, utilize their services. How does one who provides the information get paid?
I can provide an experience where those other places maybe can't. So somebody who wants to sponsor what I do can join the conversation on my Slack channel, can attend the in-person events that I do, or buy us dinner in return for an opportunity to speak for 10 or 15 minutes to a captive audience, an engaged group that will ask questions and give you something much more valuable than a drive-by digital ad that people may or
Right.
may not click on.
It's a
I
much
think it's
harder
that
sell for you, though.
it's a heavier lift, but you know what?
Yeah.
It's also more fun. I mean, I so look forward to the week every year where I do the in-person event. We spend 3 days together and people pay me good money to do it. We have these great conversations. I always have, at least one sponsor who participates and I think gets value out of it. It's just a different thing than buying a digital ad, which the click rates on a digital ad are really small. But being in a room with people, I mean, especially if you're selling like high value services. For a long time, I had a sponsor on the podcast who sells, basically management consulting services. All they have to do is get one, one person a year because of my podcast to sign up, and they've come out way ahead. Someone like that, it makes sense for, but it helps that they can be part of a conversation and not just a digital ad.
Yeah, and then they
Here's your
relation.
one of your Ami's take on the whole space.
Please.
Sure.
So you've got like 24, 25 or something billion businesses under $1 million and like maybe a million above $1 million. I'm making up the numbers. Take the mammoths in the space like Inc. or Entrepreneur or whatever. They've got so much overhead, right? That to, that their engines are just not inherently designed to serve that smaller market. And so they have an audience predominantly of wannabe entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are thinking about it, et cetera, et cetera. And they get their big advertisers excited by their numbers, not necessarily. And somehow they manage to survive for the life of
So far.
so far. I don't know how. Although I think the number of print magazines keeps going down and stuff. I don't exactly know that anymore.
And every magazine is publishing fewer issues than they used to. Monthlies are now every other month.
But the challenge is for guys like Loren who are providing this little sort of niche content community, how to monetize it. And it's difficult. And the model seems to be like in a state of flux. Like I wish Loren would do 4 events a year.
I wish he would too.
Okay. Or like do things to accelerate the model. But I think there is a major need for what Loren does. I do worry a little bit, Loren, about what AI is going to do to models like yours. I mean, I'm scratching my head trying to figure out how we should leverage AI at multi-funding, but I know we got to do it. And there's no doubt that the whole online place, I know this is Lynn's favorite topic to talk about AI. It really just makes her head almost fall off. Um,
Explode is what the word is.
but AI is going to be your friend or your enemy. You got to try to figure out how to make it your friend, right?
Yeah, right.
And how to make it. It's a kind of, I mean, it's a whole other discussion. Um, we're here for you, buddy. All steps along the way. I think Loren's content is incredible.
Lauren,
Well,
when you have your face-to-face meetings, which I still to this day, you can put AI and do all these things, but personal relationships, face-to-face, one-on-one or group where you're together make a lot of sense. So when you do these and you said you have one, is it local? Could you do more if you said you were going to do one, in the far northwest of the country and then in the southwest and then in the southeast and then in the northeast? Would that be a way to expand? I mean, it's you going to all those different places, but is that a possibility?
I think it's very doable, and it's definitely one of my goals.
Hmm.
The They do take these 3-day events do take a good bit of planning.
Well,
Um,
I know all about that. Yeah.
I charge a decent amount of money to
Right.
go somewhere, and I limit it to 25 or so people.
Hmm.
And the idea is to get together and be able to get to know each other.
Right.
And I promise people, I'm not bringing in speakers to talk at you. You come and I'm going to ask everybody to throw out topic ideas, what they want to talk about. And then we vote on them. And then we address those topics in the order that they
Right.
get votes. So it's kind of a peer group thing. There's a lot of work that goes into it. First of all, 4 would be a lot of work for me to do in 1 year, but not insurmountable, and I'm gonna get to that. The other thing is I have to be able to sell tickets to 4, and I'm not sure at the point where I'm at the point where I could do that. I've made a lot of progress. Ami, you got something to say, go ahead.
How about 2 next year instead of 1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
No, I agree, but I also
Maybe
wanna do a
3 years
different
the
kind of
year after.
I want to do a different kind of event too, because by definition, at these events, I'm mostly attracting people who are aware of 21 Hats and know what I'm doing. I also want to go into cities, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Seattle, all around the country, and have a much less expensive event where I do have a speaker or two and I attract business owners who may not know about 21 Hats and introduce them to what I'm trying to do and try to get them involved in the community. And that in some ways is even more important because that's how I'm going to grow the community.
So this business community that you're growing, I mean, there's large organizations like EO, like Ami's in, where they sell the community. There's, peer to peer, a lot of them. I mean, Vistage is one. Is it because you're doing an even you're targeting even smaller businesses? Because all of those experiences are good and they're, you know, in person or one-on-one or Zoom with a community. Is that what you're aiming for? Smaller than those groups? Because you have a lot of competition. That's my only point.
There is competition in that area for sure. I'm not necessarily aiming for smaller businesses, but not everybody belongs to one of those organizations. And by the way,
Certainly not.
those organizations are terrific.
No,
And
sure.
Uh, I mean, like with everything, it depends on the specifics. If you're in, Vistage, for example, a lot depends on your Vistage chair. If it's the right chair for you, it can be an incredible experience. Some people don't find the right chair, don't find the right group, and that's a challenge. It's also pretty expensive. So
Very expensive
yes, I
for a
will
smaller business, for sure.
attract I'm the it's easier for me to attract smaller businesses, but for some people at a lower price point, I'm offering something that they haven't found elsewhere.
Do you know anything, what do you know the typical size of your reader? Do you know anything about their demographic?
Oh, I've done Survey Monkeys. My most loyal customers respond. That doesn't necessarily give me an overview of the whole group, and I haven't spent the money to do a better version of that kind of market research. Obviously, it can be done. I know who shows up at the events, and there's an incredible range. The most recent one I had, the smallest was probably around a couple $100,000 a year in revenue to $200 million in revenue. That
Wow.
was an outlier, of course. I would say the sweet spot is more between, 2.5 and 10, something like that. Most businesses fall in there. Of those who are most involved, who are most likely to listen to the podcast, to read the newsletter, come to my, monthly Zoom meeting and show up at an event.
We have to get Loren to my first inaugural Grit Unconference.
There you go.
Maybe I can help. Let's do it together.
I mean, the idea of an unconference, and I don't know if you've ever been to one, more, and it's not dissimilar to what you try and do in your events.
Yes, I was going to say that I know that model. I was inspired by it, and some of that thinking went into what I try to do.
So, at an unconference, the entire agenda is set by the participants, and there are no paid speakers. Paint a beautiful picture of what 21 Hats looks like in 2 or 3 years. What does it look like?
In 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. You know, I mean, you've seen some of this. You attended one of my events in Fort Worth a couple of years ago, and you saw there. Uh, I put myself in the hot seat and I asked people for suggestions, what I should do, and I got a lot of great suggestions back, and I also got a lot of really reaffirming, almost testimony. There were I'm sure you remember this, Ami. There were a couple of people who got up and got emotional talking about how, especially during the depths of the pandemic when they were struggling, they felt that 21 Hats was kind of a lifeline for them and really helped them out. So I know there's a market out there. I need to reach them. I need to connect with them. I need to pull them in. And yes, AI is making that more challenging in a lot of ways. This is a big country. A lot of people here. There are a lot of business owners. I believe there's a market out there for what I do. Within 2 or 3 years, I think I could be doing, 2, 3, or 4 annual events along the lines of the one I'm doing now. I think I could be doing, you know, easily 4 or 5 of a different kind of event, just, not a 3-day thing, an afternoon or an evening thing, which is more of a, I'm going to provide great content. You're going to pay me a tiny bit of money, but you're going to be introduced to what I'm doing with 21 Hats. And, I just see the community building that way because when people get involved, they tend to stick around. They like being able to throw a question on Slack. They like being able to come to the monthly Zoom meeting and just say, hey, I've got this challenge right now with an employee. This is what's going wrong. Has anybody else done anything like this? Um,
Right.
I think there's a need for that. So if I can just, it wouldn't take that many more people for me to suddenly have, instead of thousands, maybe, 20,000 people involved. And suddenly sponsor dollars are a little bit easier to get, and suddenly this thing is self-sustaining enough that I can bring on an employee or two. Maybe they're contract employees initially, but suddenly I'm a little bit less out of the day to day. And the big thing I'd love to do, I mean, a lot of these businesses, the publications we've talked about, Inc. is a great example, have thrived because they've created some kind of annual awards event. The Inc. 5000 is their moneymaker. Inc. magazine probably wouldn't exist without that. It's done really well for them. And yet I was in charge of that project for a while, and we all know that of the companies on that Inc. 5000, if you go back and check a couple years later, a certain percentage of them are not going to be in business anymore. And that percentage is higher than you might think, because if your focus is so much on growth, you are likely to run into certain problems that tend to come up again and again. There's another way to do business. I would like to create an awards ceremony, an awards event that focuses on more sustainable aspects of building a business than just growing revenue. And
Absolutely.
I think that's there for the taking. And all I need is to get out of the day to day, have a chance to focus on it, build that up, create awareness, and start doing those events.
Yeah, I've always been leery of those where they build the top line, or even, in my days of being a lender and having customers talk about their growth and they want to break a million, and then they want to break 2 million. And it's like, really? Let's talk about percentage of growth to the bottom line and the profitability, growing profitability as a percentage of sales or whatever. I think that measuring like that, keeping the business lean and mean would be more realistic.
Now, there's a reason publications like Inc. focus on revenue, and we should acknowledge, I mean, a lot of businesses aren't going to talk about their profitability,
I
and
know they're
I
not.
understand that too. Some
That's why
do,
they're not there when you look at them in 5 years.
but if you're looking for a ranking system, revenue is the low-hanging fruit. But there are other things you can do. There are other ways to look at how businesses are thriving, and I would love to focus on that.
The sleep 5,000 or
Slow and steady, there's an argument to be made, but for that, as a lot of people you and I know in common, Ami, learned a long time ago. We've all heard the saying, revenue is vanity, profits are sanity.
Loren, it's always a great treat to have you. I think Lynn and I have successfully accomplished the objective, and we've interviewed you and you haven't interviewed us. So congratulations to
We
us.
won.
We
You
won.
did. I guess I really wanted to win, but then I guess I'm too polite. My question for you, Ami, you help businesses get capital. How often do you say to a potential client, look, you could qualify for a loan or you might even be able to raise equity, but I don't think it's a good idea for you to do that. You can find another way to finance the growth that you're trying to achieve that would be less risky. Do you ever do that?
I think there's two stages to that, Loren. The first stage to that question is if if your strategy is clear, the money and the way to finance it is often the easiest thing to solve for. But people's strategy is often not,
Flawed.
right? So I always say never get a loan without a plan. Okay. And a lot of times people just don't have that plan. Now, then you can decide how risky the different alternatives are and if the risk makes sense. But that clear plan is often not in the works. And I think you have to say, as an example, if you're going to take a $150,000 loan and your monthly payment is going to be approximately $1,700 a month for 10 years, about that, Lynn, I think it's close, maybe 1,800. And so what's the absolute worst case scenario that's going to happen? You're on the hook for $1,800 a month for 10 years. The best case to happen is if your plan works, that plan will that capital increase will exponentially increase the value of your business. And what's most likely going to happen, Loren? Something in the middle. And that something in the middle is usually a pretty darn good scenario. So it's like, what's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? What's the mid case scenario? And then decide for yourself. But I'll never push debt down anyone's throat.
How often when they come to you with that plan, do they think they have a clear, good plan and you look at it and you disagree? And what happens then?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you statistically. One of our goals is I think we got to get much better on our data and our stats. So I couldn't tell you. I think that happens 10% time, 5% of the time, 30% of the time. I should be able to, but I can't. But if I'm not confident in the plan, I'm going to tell them. Doesn't mean they're going to listen to me, but I'm going to tell them.
Thank you for
Okay.
letting me play podcast host. I appreciate it.
So you feel better now?
I do. Questions are so much easier than answers.
All right. Loren, I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship. Now I got a challenge for you.
Okay.
My challenge for you is I bet you if you really put your brain to it, you can figure out ways to use AI to free up 30% of your
No, Ami is so drinking the AI Kool-Aid. Yes, he is.
and
And he also will tell you where to go to figure it out.
try to figure that out. But
Mm.
I bet you could use AI to free up 30% of your time if you work on it.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. So far, I think I would say I haven't freed up a tremendous amount of time, but I am doing more and I'm doing it better. I think it's really important to me to make sure that I maintain the authenticity of what I do. I'm never going to just turn it over to AI. And I've been watching your column as it comes in, Ami, and there are a lot fewer typos and stuff in it. You clearly are running it through AI, but it's still you, and it still has your
But Lauren,
expertise.
let me now. Oh, we'll have like a coming to Jesus. Okay, AI knows my columns and my style and my personality. I've trained it,
Crazy.
so I use AI now. If I just went onto Chat GBT or whatever, it says I want to write about the impact of the SBA. I would get one thing that would look horrible, would be unauthentic, and this mess. If I go to ChatGPT and said, I'm going to write my next 21 Hats column in my voice, here's the topic I want to write about, and here are my three main points. And then we go back and forth as it. Then when I have a version of it, I then go put it in the AI tester, right? Because I go check if this is any of this smells like AI. And the answer is usually 3% or less. And so it's not like and then I go back and forth and go back and forth and go back and forth with the machine until I think I got it right. I'm using it as a writing assistant, and I think it's making me better. And what do you
I can tell you as your editor, it is. You're right.
right? What do you say about that? Like, is that bad?
No, there are dangers that people need to be
Of
wary of.
course, it can if you're not careful, it can make you lazy.
The best things in your column, Ami, are always going to be the actual examples of situations that you've experienced
Of course,
trying to help another business owner.
of course.
And ChatGPT can't summon that up and give it to you. The heart of the column has to come from you. And the danger isn't just that you don't get that. It's also that even if you put it in yourself, if you just turn it over to AI, it'll strip it out. I often put my writing into AI and say, can you improve this? And it does certain things. Sometimes it chooses a better word than I've chosen. It smooths out a transition that I haven't put enough time into. It does things to make the writing better, but it also can take away the spark. It often will, what I think are the best moments. It'll take out a quote that I think is meaningful. It'll take out an insight it'll smooth over and kind of make more generic the insights that I think are there. And you don't want to let it do that to you. That's what you have to be
Absolutely.
careful about.
I mean, you using AI as my writing assistant, okay, in any one column that we go back and forth about 24 times. Okay. So if you just said to AI, I want to write a column about this today, cut, paste, go, you'll be lazy. But if you use AI and you go back and forth and you push and you pull and you twist and turn, I think you get a better result. It's not like I'm now challenging the rabbi at our synagogue who spends hours every week writing his sermons. And he said to me this week, I ask ChatGPT to write me a sermon. It wasn't awful. I said, I'm sure it was. I go, but did you load up your last 20 sermons into ChatGPT so it can learn your style and your voice and your style and how you like to speak? So then it knows you. And then did you work with it to help you build your next sermon? Is that bad?
No, it's not.
It's right.
just
It's
not.
frightening, Lauren. It's like But it's
Listen, there's plenty of things to be worried about. I'm worried about AI taking over the world, but in terms of just living our everyday lives and trying to operate better and more efficiently, no, that's not bad.
there are some content I see out there that's AI written, especially people's comments on LinkedIn posts and stuff that, I mean, there's one guy, he's the worst offender, right? And I literally,
Anybody I know?
I'm not going to say his name. I take every one of his,
Comment.
every once in a while when I'm bored or I can't sleep, I take his comments on posts and I run them through an AI tester. And his whole thing is about authenticity and this and that, whatever. And his shit is like 87% written by AI, not in his voice at all. And then every year on my birthday, somehow I automatically get this long birthday story from him. Oh, bull. Okay.
So there are ways to use it. Here's the way I want to use it. You asked about 2 or 3 years. I'm hoping that maybe I will have gotten there then. I want to take every podcast I've ever done, and you've been a guest on my podcast many times. I want to create a chatbot with all of the conversations I've had with business owners on that podcast and turn it into something that, and not just me, but outsiders, hopefully who will pay me for the right, can query just like ChatGPT and say, you know, how should I handle a layoff? How should I handle getting a loan?
100%.
That's
So there's a way now. It's all new, and what I'm trying to do, and I think I wrote about this in my last column, is trying to make us more operationally efficient. But then I make fun of that guy on ChatGPT, like the multi-funding marketing materials that I don't produce. We use AI tools to help with them, and sometimes I think they're not as authentic as they could be. And so it's this very delicate balance, and I'm working hard on trying to find the balance between not making me work faster and get better output and not getting lazy. And it's hard.
it is hard.
But if you don't work on it, you're also going to get left behind.
Right. I can't think of an excuse not to be trying things and learning and figuring out what works for you and what doesn't.
I mean, I was working this weekend on ops flows and process charts for our work at multi-funding. Like what AI did for me, and it produced software specs for me this morning.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought it was a different language. I didn't understand it.
It really did on Helen.
And that's the great thing. You probably don't have to.
I definitely don't have to.
Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute treat. Loren, always good to be with you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye now.